since I'm the I'm the I'm the technical as well for this.
I think that's better. Ah, yeah, that's better. That little light on top of my head is not glaring anymore.
Okay.
We're also staging our little squares, something I put into my my paper this morning.
Mm-hmm. Hold on, Dana. I'm just reading my cues.
Oh, it's already 28 people. Hmm. Does that mean people are connecting? If it says there's 28, they're managing?
um, that was smart. That was our target. So we're getting the target.
If they're
To,
announced in the participants, does that mean they have connected?
I think so. And more people are coming in. So okay, we're waiting for some facilitators to come in. It's also an interesting thing, this sound only. During the lockdown, we've turned more and more and more into sound and how sound plays in relationality of people. So, and using the voice, the power of the voice. That's why I'm excited about your paper as well. It will not
Oh,
distract anything from your voice.
not even my beautiful blouse.
No. It will just be a supporter.
It's my only
Support.
visual. It's my only visual.
Yeah, all right. I have cues to mind. now I'm having problems with the video. Oh. Okay, hold on, people. I think I'm having problems with my video. We've been waiting for this for a while and now it's not cooperating with me. So let me just stop my screen share. We can never get this right on the first go. Maybe tomorrow. All right, let's do this.
Performance Curators Initiatives, or PCI, is a network of curators, educators, researchers, performance makers and practitioners, community workers, or enthusiasts in the emerging and expansive field of performance curation globally. Our primary goals focus on building connections and sustaining those connections that we've built along the way through our projects, our symposiums, and our collaborations with different practitioners around the globe. Aside from these connections, we are also initiating conversations and fostering different platforms for exchanges on the various notions of performance and the role of curation in performance and the role of performativity in curatorial practice. And finally, we hope to forge collaborations that were enabled through these conversations and connections that we've built along the way. A large part of how we envision curation or performance curation comes from the Latin term curare, from which curation comes from. Conventionally, that concept refers to the custodianship or the care for materials in a museum or archival setting. However, in performance curation, or at least in PCI, we think about it in relation to caring for relationships or tending to relationships or the curatorship of care. In PCI, we are also constantly thinking about the idea of public engagement and the role of curators, of artists, of presenters, of cultural mediators, and researchers in presenting different ideas and their accountability or even ethical responsibilities in presenting different messages and ideas to a presumed public, whether these are our artist collaborators, our community collaborators, the people that we work with, and a wider audience. And lastly, we are also thinking about the relationship between research and creative practice and the essential role of research in making creative work, and vice versa, the role of creativity or creative practice in tightening research. So we invite you in this expanding network. Connect with us, converse with us, and collaborate with us. Be our creative partner in the caring relationship that we're trying to build in the PCI network. Performance Curators Initiatives, or PCI, is a network of curators, educators, researchers, performance makers and practitioners, community workers, or enthusiasts in the emerging and expansive field of performance curation globally.
Jan, ay may mas masahol pang malaking pasistang di kontento sa hawak niya sa madulas pang malaking mundo riyan.
Iba yung higit sa tau-tauhan lang na maliit na pasista rito.
Kailangan ng malaking pasista riyan na magpalaki pa ng magpalaki, mangamkam pa ng mangamkam,
Mangamkam pa ng mangamkam.
mangontrol ng magkontrol, magparami pa ng mga tagapamayapa
At ng mga ipinapasok sa maliit na pilit.
sa dami at dalas ng inyong angal.
My face, my voice, my name, or my words. But we are in this assemblage now, in this strangely common space, but extremely rare moment. There is a need to sink in this being, and hopefully, in this being, we may think of ways to also become. Here, now, never, soon. When and where? Welcome to the Performance Curators Initiative's International Symposium 2020, Curating Conversations on Curation and Performance in the Time of Halting and Transformation. Finally, I am honored to have her with us for this keynote provocation. So without further ado, let's all welcome Dr. Amelia Jones for her keynote address for the PCI International Symposium 2020.
Hello, I'm very pleased to be here today giving this talk for the Conversations on Curation and Performance in the Time of Halting and Transformation. In contrast to the reactionary liberalism and ethnic envy of the tick box or multiculturalism approaches of the global art complex, this strategy of infiltration asserts voices that demand structural change. In order to hear these voices and incorporate them, institutions must change on micro and macro levels. This means making and curating art differently, perhaps even dropping the idea of art as it has existed to date in the still Euro-American, Anglophone, and white dominant structures of the not-so-global art complex. That is the end of my lecture. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to getting your questions. Take care.
Screenshot.
Hello, everybody.
Very briefly only. Hello.
Naglalag ka, you're lagging.
Screenshot right now. I'm lagging.
Yes.
I'm okay. Okay na ba now? Okay, so I'll do a screenshot now. You can smile, the biggest smile and the sweetest smile.
Because you're so small.
Okay.
So you need to smile big.
Smile big. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Stretch, Dana, stretch. All right. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm not sure if you can see me, but I'm hoping that you can hear me well. Somebody give me a thumbs up if I am being heard properly. All right. I saw one. That's enough. So, hello, everyone. To start this gathering, allow me to acknowledge once more the Darawal people, who are the traditional custodians of the land wherein I am temporarily located, which is Wollongong, New South Wales, Australia. I also acknowledge their peoples, elders past, present, and emerging. Yesterday was a bright day. Today is a cold and rainy, gray day for us here. So it's a very different feel today. And moreover, October is Indigenous Peoples Month in the Philippines, and we open each day to honor and acknowledge the many First Nations peoples who are the traditional custodians of the many lands on where we all stand today. Let's continue to fight for Indigenous peoples' land, rights, cultural pride, self-determination, and freedom. I am Rosel Pineda, the PCI Artistic Curator and Founder. Welcome to the second day or day 2 of the PCI International Symposium 2020, Conversations on Curation and Performance in the Time of Halting and Transformation. Whew, I cannot do that anymore with one breath. I'm out of practice. So firstly, a big gratitude to all of those who came and conversed with us yesterday during the opening program. I understand that it was a dense and heavily connected program, from the opening PCI video concentrating on curatorship of care, to the opening performance, to the introductory framing on bodies, time, and space in an assemblage, and finally to Dr. Jones's prompt on the need to decolonize the global art complex, to which many of our participants responded. If you missed this opening and keynote program, it's still available on the PCI YouTube channel for viewing or reviewing. Please check the PCI FB page for the links to the YouTube channel. And do keep your comments coming so we may continue to collate and relay them to Dr. Jones for response. Secondly, we would like to clarify that PST in our symposium kit refers to Philippine Standard Time, not Pacific Standard Time. And although there were several information in our FB event page as well as our email correspondences with you that PST is Philippine time, is indeed Philippine time, we understand the confusion prompted by the acronym PST, and we apologize for this. However, do allow me to pick up on some of the interesting points regarding the mapping and perspectives and positionings that this quote-unquote confusion prompted in this conversation. It is interesting to note the magnitude of how we assert even unknowingly the map and time zone of our world to understand and map the rest of the world, so that our standard, quote-unquote standard, become almost immediately the standard of interpreting others. More interestingly so, even if PST, the acronym, is accepted to refer to Philippine Standard Time, when you actually Google these acronyms, it will immediately direct you to PST as Pacific Standard Time, which is to me a stark contemporary example and exercise of colonialist logocentrism. almost half a century after Said, huh? The act of confusion, of what confuses people, is also an interesting pickup to the agenda and challenge of decolonization highlighted by Dr. Jones's talk yesterday. How often in this global art complex do we not only assume these colonial positionings and algorithms as quote-unquote standards, whether it is standard time or standard acronym meaning or standard period, but also accept, generate, regenerate them in mapping and building various relationships with other peoples, in our case, as the colonial others, colonized others rather. As was provoked by Dr. Davida's question in yesterday's open forum. Lastly, I also want to pick up on the idea of seeming internal colonialism as hinted by Ninian's question on regional colonialism, to refer to the various power relationships in and amongst practitioners, even in the colonized world. Center versus periphery, institutions versus grassroots community, and so on and so forth. As PCI and as ARPS, as our community-based research residency, we learned this through a long-term relationship and community immersion with our Dumagat indigenous community partners to ask the simple lesson of asking rather than assuming. Of course, I do not want to preempt this discussion, as this will be the center of the closing provocation panel actually on the last day of the symposium, October 10, 4 to 6 p.m. Philippine time. A panel that sort of pushes back, to borrow a term from Dr. Jones's presentation. In between the provocation yesterday and the narrative of pushing back on the last day, we slowly unfold in the presentations from various global and continental narratives from Canada, from Europe, from Australia, from Japan. I had a very interesting question yesterday, last night, regarding the curatorial framework that I'm employing in this symposium. And this is sort of a hinted answer on that, but I won't preempt because you need to be in the sessions. So finally, I implore you to attend the many sessions of this symposium. Treat it as an ongoing conversation, as these sessions are as much in conversation with each other as we are conversing here now in this session alone. So thank you and welcome again. So today's session will be moderated by Professor Oscar Tantocos Cerquina Jr., who is, or OJ for short, who is joining us from Victoria, Australia, where the weather is more unpredictable as ours here in New South Wales. OJ is a published scholar and a poet. He teaches at the Department of Speech Communication and Theater Arts in the University of the Philippines, but now is currently finishing his PhD studies in UniMelb, or University of Melbourne. So hi, OJ. I can't see you, but if you can wave at our participant, please do so. OJ also moderated Dena's panel in the 2017 PCI Symposium. So this is kind of an interesting connection as well. We also welcome our respondent for today, Professor Eileen Legaspi-Ramirez, who is a faculty at the Department of Art Studies, University of the Philippines, like myself, in Diliman. She is a curator and a published scholar as well of contemporary art and the live arts in the Philippines, and a longtime network of the PCI. She was also in the keynote panel with Dena and I during the 2017 PCI Symposium. So this is sort of a reunion of that keynote panel. And of course, our distinguished presenter for today's conversation, Dr. Dena Davida from Montreal, Canada. Say, wave, Dena. If Dr. Jones's article provoked the early germs for the formation of the Performance Curators Initiative's PCI, Presentia in Absentia, my many encounters, lengthy conversations, and built relationship with Dr. Davida pushed PCI into fruition. As it was a presentation and a research residency, which I did with their Performance Curatorial Network in Canada, International Community of Performing Arts Curators, that really made me form PCI, sort of an early model for the network, I suppose. And I'd like to honor that connection with Dr. Davida. She is a core family of PCI. Aside from that, you are at the presence of one of the pioneers of contemporary dance in Canada, in Montreal at least, or in Quebec at least, teaching the first classes and formed a dance collective based on the postmodern dance practice of contact improvisation in Quebec in the 70s. She co-founded Tangent, Quebec's first contemporary dance presenting organization in 1980, where she continued to work as a dance curator until 2020. She also co-founded Montreal's International Festival of New Dance and the Can Dance Dance Touring Network. She taught dance composition, improvisation, lab and movement analysis, contemporary dance aesthetics, sociology, and anthropology at the University of Quebec as a part-time lecturer. She holds a PhD from the same university's program for studies and practices of the arts, and has published works in dance anthropology and ethnography, the most widely acknowledged of which are Fields in Motion, Ethnography in the World of Dance, published in 2012, and Curating Live Arts, Critical Perspectives, Essays, and Conversations on Theory and Practice, published in 2018, in which my article is also included. She is currently contributing to the burgeoning international movement that is building networks, a field of study and a body of literature for live arts curation. She is currently at work creating Turba, the Journal of Global Practices in Live Arts Curation, a hybrid publication with both academic and literary writing, and for which she will serve as co-editor and managing editor. Dena, you just correct my mispronunciations, if you will, but I will give the floor to you. Dr. Dena Davida, everyone.
Thank you. Perfect pronunciations, Roselle. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to stop my screen sharing so that you can have a full view of Dr. Davida.
Okay. So just to know, the only visuals you'll have for my presentation are me and my beautiful bluffs. Okay, to begin. It is 4 a.m. in Montreal, Quebec, and here we are together virtually in the flesh, if not in the same room. I'll be able to speak to the somatics of immersing myself in a 6-day symposium that takes place in the middle of my nighttime at the Final Exchange Cafe. But I am awake. No, don't worry about that. Warm greetings to you, my international art world colleagues. I'm delighted to take part in this gathering of curators and performing artists that Roselle has imagined once again, and particularly as it falls at the very moment when we're on the cusp of launching Turba, the Journal for Global Practices in Live Arts Curation, to which I hope some of you might contribute. We'll be sending out a call within the month. I'm grateful to Roselle for coaxing me into formulating this discussion paper and undertaking the task to draw some kind of initial meanings from this turbulent moment of crisis, even as it is unfolding. In my adopted country of Canada, where to which I immigrated and in which I've resided since 1977, we're thankfully at last in the middle of a crucial, inevitable project of moving towards reconciliation with our First Nations people. This process is advancing unevenly, but it is vital. And so let me begin by acknowledging with deep gratitude and respect that the land on which I live and work is part of the unceded traditional territories of the St. Lawrence Iroquois, Mohawk Nations, and the Longhouse Confederacy, that have long served, as they will always in the future, as places of gathering and exchange among nations, and with whom I share a belief in the power of community gatherings grounded in dance and music. This symposium has been lingering and growing in my mind over the weeks since receiving Roselle's invitation letter, and has become a welcoming organizing principle with which to filter the significance of the online roundtables, board meetings, conferences, and artistic events on offer that I've been attending for days on end during the quarantine, as we all have. Sitting for hours with face and shoulders framed in a small square on the computer screen, adjusting the light and camera angles, staring at minute details of my mirror image after a few virtual encounters, it became apparent that we were each, whether consciously or not, methodically staging a miniature performance of ourselves in our little corner of the screen, within a larger mosaic of miniature squares, unless in a one-on-one conversation. A multitude of faces, Mastering the learning curve for the workings of these group meeting applications has kept my mature brain well activated. I wonder, what are the politics of this virtual gaze? What are the somatics, ethics, and etiquette of these virtual encounters? My ideas about what the art world is experiencing during this pandemic had been random and sporadic, reactive and emotional, and I initially felt lost in the barrage of rapidly unfolding online encounters spilling into my inbox, competing for my attention. But as this conversation paper has taken shape, my thoughts about how art worlds are being transformed by the pandemic have become somewhat more coherent. So thank you once again, Roselle, for giving me occasion to make sense of the whirlwind of earth-shaking events that suddenly changed our daily lives this spring and are altering the future of society and the planet. And I am, as always, grateful to you as well, Angel, and all of the other staff members who have so quickly and deftly put this symposium together, up and ready to go in such a short time. It's also essential to acknowledge that the thoughts and concepts expressed in this text are deeply rooted in the work of my inspirational academic elders, and in particular, dance anthropologists Joanne Kiali-Inohomuku and Cynthia Novak, cultural historian Larry Shiner, arts sociologist Howard Becker, performance theorist Susan Bennett, and aesthetic philosopher Richard Schusterman. This conversation paper roughly takes the form of an autoethnographic narrative and begins with a succinct account of how we've all been contending with the COVID-19 crisis in the North American art world context, particularly in Canada, through these first 7 destabilizing months since lockdown began. Next, I'll offer 3 critical accounts of my participation in online performance events, posing questions about emerging performance and curatorial models. A rudimentary conclusion offers a few initial thoughts and questions about possible futures that are taking shape not only through the effects of the pandemic, but also by way of this urgent phase of long-standing sociopolitical movements in the spheres of social justice, migration, violence, terrorism, tyranny, climate change, and more. As someone who marched in the 1960s in the streets of California in protest against the Vietnam War and in solidarity with women's rights, it definitely feels like another major global revolution is in process. Whew, almost makes me cry to say those words. It's really quite moving. Okay, here we begin. So when the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown suddenly and completely overnight shuttered theaters and other performance venues, clubs, social halls, festivals, outdoor gatherings, and all manner of artistic events across Canada last March, in the midst of their spring programming, the disruption was experienced here as a shock felt throughout a society that had been relatively peaceful and unscarred by brutality and misery, at least in my lifetime. The effects of pandemics, gun violence and terrorism, economic and climate crises, and social justice revolutions have been present, of course, but in a far gentler and less disruptive way than in many other countries, and particularly for our neighbors just below our borders in the United States of America. In our country, fortunately, most, but not all, politicians are relatively humane and reasonable, and science has largely, but not entirely, prevailed over politics in Canada in determining safety guidelines. Canadian curators and programmers have awakened each morning to a new set of parameters, with decisions to make about possible futures for their seasons and their festivals. Artistic communities across the provinces have lobbied fervently for funding relief and have found some support to varying degrees from cultural ministries, in particular for salary subsidies for their staffs and artist fees. Our federal arts funding body, the Canada Council for the Arts, has quickly shifted into creating substantial programs for initiatives, of course, in new technologies and for outdoor performance ventures. But as you certainly know, lacking national political will and intelligent leadership, artistic communities have not been so fortunate in the United States. The brute force of impact from the combined COVID-19 pandemic, the intensifying of the Black Lives Matter movement, which hit us in Canada as if a wave rippling northwards, along the increasing disastrous effects of global warming, have quite literally taken our breath away. One afternoon recently, I listened in on a town hall meeting of the Network of Canadian Arts Presenters, CAPACOA. Another meeting's actually happening today, by the way, whose members had focused their attention on the leading question. And that question was, how can the live performance sector recover from the COVID crisis and at the same time foster innovation, resilience, sustainability, and equity? And I think that is a central question in our communities here. Canadians and Americans began the pandemic lockdowns in a state of anger and despair. The early phase was cathartic. Strict confinement conditions had disrupted absolutely everything. As scientists worked feverishly to understand the way in which the virus was invisibly spreading, it seemed to be potentially everywhere. Every surface touched, every inhalation of air. To the profound dismay of curators and artistic directors, performance seasons were abruptly canceled, creative work in studio residencies were shut down, contracts defaulted, tickets refunded. Cultural venues and festivals here did ask their ticket holders if they might consider the purchase of their ticket as a donation, and many reportedly did. Those artists who were dependent on professional fees from projects began to worry about their day-to-day survival, and that was in the first month. Arts presenting organizations were faced with questions of how their employees might be paid and for how long, whether there would be financial relief from funders, what might be the long-term viability of large-scale venues like opera houses with unionized employees, and an economic dependency on massive commercial ticket sales and rentals from blockbuster touring shows for their very survival. Our largest theaters in Canada are not government-run and funded, and that's a contrast to many of them in Europe. That's interesting to know. They're commercially run. They collectively anguished. When and how would audiences ever feel safe in returning again to theater venues indoors? My inbox filled with urgent notices of online meetings. Artists in New York City and Montreal began discussions about the ecology, economy, and power structure of arts presenting systems and the racism at the core of their functioning. Redux Amelia Jones' paper from yesterday. Driven initially by frustration and anger, they unearthed the systemic inequities in the arts presenting economy. These exchanges soon included curators and presenters, agents and producers. These cultural workers within their own professional network meetings shared information about their local circumstances, difficulties, solutions, seasons. All of this was the continuation, albeit accelerated by the crisis, of a real shift in the politics of presenting that had been simmering for many years in North America. Arts administrators' salaries, for instance, had long been outsized when compared to artists' fees and annual income. Artistic directors and curators had long wielded absolute power over access to their presenting venues and season programs, and even to funds for creative processes in the forms of commissions and co-productions. These leaders and directors were largely white heterosexual men and occasionally women. Artists from Black and Brown and First Nations communities, and that's our focus here in North America specifically, were glaringly underrepresented on stage, on staff, and in the boardrooms of arts presenting organizations. Accusations of tokenism, underrepresentation, and cultural appropriation became central subjects of the conversations we were having in Montreal and other parts of Canada. And of course, I'm very curious to know how those conversations are taking place in other cultural contexts, as per my question yesterday. Am I talking too fast? Is it okay? It's okay? For their part, arts educators like Amelia Jones, who had for decades been immersed in progressive discourses around post-colonialism and social justice, are currently holding their own network meetings with ever more cruciality in view of radically transforming their fields of study and the orientation of their university departments. For example, in the past few weeks, I've been participating in a meeting of the Dance History Study Group of the Dance Studies Association. Those are all the university teachers and professors, in which the provocative question was posed: how might we conceive the form and content of a new genre textbook or syllabus on dance historiography and theory? That's one of the projects of this committee now, an entirely new dance historiography textbook. An email thread in the last week from the members of the study group on ethnochoreology of the International Council on Traditional Music began with responses to a professor's urgent question about how can she rename her university program in traditional dance. And she asked us if the term world dance was now considered a racist term. So we deliberated whether worlds of dance, or then again, dance worlds, might be viable. We asked, might we employ the concept of culture and so use the term dance cultures? Or if not, perhaps cultures of dance? So you can see the conundrum that we're in at the moment, just about naming things. So artists have quickly and efficiently created online support networks, local and national, for artists who would soon be facing economic austerity. These networks have in fact been effective in raising money and awareness, creating solidarity, and organizing effective discussions on social networks. Theaters, particularly smaller venues like Tangent, like my own, sought strategies to honor the promised artist fees when performances were canceled. Even as they sought opportunities for creating and performing within the strictures of the lockdown, artists moved into dialogue with directors of festivals and other presenting organizations, retooling their performances into digital versions. Confined to their homes, many began offering performances directly to online followers, their living rooms, becoming miniature venues and film stages. Curators turned their attention to inventing possibilities for outdoor live solo performances in unconventional outdoor spaces. I'm sure this is going on in most parts of the world. I'm quite certain. You'll tell me at the end. Eventually, when safety conditions have allowed, studio spaces were reopened for artists' residencies. It was in late September that theaters in some Canadian cities were permitted to bring spectators indoors in limited numbers and with stringent safety precautions in place. Early cross-country surveys from the Arts Presenting Network in Canada, Capicoa, show small, sporadic signs of success with procedures designed to bring spectators inside theaters again, and demonstrated a clear hunger among arts patrons to return. They did sell all of their tickets, by the way. And yet, on September 30th, once again, our orange alert in Montreal turned back to red, the sign of a second oncoming wave of the pandemic. Newsletters on October 1st announced cancellation of all the first attempts to open doors to theaters. This just happened. In imagining future programming, this day-to-day uncertainty certainly demands a choice between risk and caution. Being part of gatherings in theaters on the occasion of live performances has long been at the center of my life. As a digital immigrant, and so not a native, who has remained fervently, perhaps unreasonably, committed to the power of liveness. I have in the past rarely made the choice to sit at a computer screen to watch a live public performance. And yet, although I didn't touch computer keys until my 30s, the internet has proven an essential tool for communication, writing, research, and connection within the global village. Over the years, I've developed a personal web page and an online presence, but I stubbornly contend that internet performances cannot replace the social necessity of coming together in the flesh as we form these temporary communities of experience to share the dance, as late Cynthia Novak has written in describing contact improvisation jams. First Nations curator Olivia Davis from Vancouver sent out a plaintive message last week in which she wrote, "Looking forward to the return to theaters where hearts are beating." It was through a later in life doctoral research project, an existential search for the deeper meanings of my contemporary dance practice from the viewpoint of its proponents and participants, that I turned to the anthropological concept of the dance event. Think village dances. In this sociocultural paradigm for performance, dancing is understood, of course, as the center of attention within a meaningful community gathering of onlookers. Now that touch has become dangerous and social distancing the norm, how can we recreate this kind of visceral, somatic, and intelligible connection through our computer screens that is made manifest when we do come together to share the dance? Art making is indeed proving persistent and resilient, and so the past 7 months have yielded inventive virtual experiences, even as we yearn to return to performance spaces. Within a few weeks after theaters were closed, determined and resourceful curators, artists, and producers began envisioning virtual adaptations of live performances in a wide array of forms. Musicians who'd long been working in the medium of the video clip were in the forefront of imagining how a chorus of voices and instrumentalists could come together as a visual mosaic, and were soon engineering some breathtaking musical videos for television and YouTube. Dancers and actors followed suit, principally through solo forms that were seeking to redefine liveness and intimacy with viewers. Film festivals, of course, moved seamlessly online, giving access to their entire lineup and at a modest price. It was soon easily possible, if not manageable, to be immersed in artistic presentations every day, all day, from the comforts at home at almost no cost. But when and how were we going to move our own bodies and breathe the outdoors air? Of course, with online movement classes and yoga in the park, which I did. What follows are 3 little studies of my own virtual spectating experiences. And the first one is called Dance Blitz. Curator and artivist Jerry Morita of Mile Zero Dance in Calgary was one of the first in Canada who managed to reformat completely her spring event, the annual Dance Blitz Cabaret, scheduled for April 29th. On her website, she characterized this series as a quick-fire evening of short-form dance works in a virtual environment. Like many of the others I've attended from my home office and living room during the lockdown, I would not have otherwise had access to these performances but for their public offering on the internet. This was my first virtual performance event during the first strict lockdown period, when we could not leave our homes except just for food shopping, for instance, and just some walks, a few walks. Already initiated into the workings of Zoom, knowing that in this case, my presence would hardly be noticed under the circumstances, and no longer confined to a chair as in a theater. I settled onto my yoga mat to combine viewing with the pleasures of contemplative stretching. In the end, it proved to be an excellent choice of spectating posture. After the first hour of gazing intently at my screen in this format, I felt Zoom fatigue creeping into my eyes and neck muscles. Only some of the performances managed to capture my full attention, and so I allowed myself to walk away from the screen on occasion, maybe into the kitchen to make a cup of tea and so to relieve the tension. I would never do this when physically present in a theater. Another non-traditional behavior that soon became apparent. We audience members began a dynamic and thought-provoking discussion among ourselves in the chat space, discussing and critiquing the choices of the dance makers as they framed their dancing bodies with one or more cameras. Excuse me. The 25 short choreographic studies ultimately yielded a Corona handbook of real-time home dance genres for computer screens, previously a minor dance form, but in these pandemic times, an urgent alternative. Although I deeply missed the informal human contact, body heat, and boisterous sound and movement of an audience in this kind of cabaret setting, there was an informality, permissiveness, and depth of conversation in the chat space that was new and welcome. I later found out that it is possible to save a Zoom chat on my computer desktop. And if you look at the very bottom of the Zoom chat, there's 3 little dots. You click on them and you can save the whole chat for that day. And I was thinking that this was a compelling idea for future audience research. This first experience of a 3-hour virtual performance had me wondering if our performance landscape might permanently adopt this very relaxed kind of presentation form for future consideration. It offers the possibility of a global audience, enhanced audience autonomy, and space for sustained audience exchange of ideas that can be archived in the end. But how might it become economically viable and more socially dynamic? And my example number 2, a local live arts festival that originated as an off-festival alternative on the edge of the Festival of Theatre of the Americas each May and June in Montreal. The Off-TA, I'll say it in English, Off-TA Festival was surprisingly quick to recreate their event online when the lockdown struck. The larger international parent festival was in fact forced to shut down definitively when its more massive venues were locked up and international touring companies halted their traveling to quarantine at home. Founded in 2006, an ingenious pair of artist curators, Jasmine Cotadal and Vincent de Repentigny, immediately conferred with artists to think about how their work might be transplanted as an online experience. They asked their spectators to give a small amount of money on a sliding scale to purchase a festival pass, and so to support their organization. I eagerly attended as many as possible. The result of the combined efforts of artists and curators yielded 15 experimental endeavors. Socially engaged theater, dance, music, interdisciplinary, and performance artworks, which each required a distinct kind of behavior and genre of intimacy between performers and audience. The artists strived to augment visceral and mental interactivity that became a kind of a drive of this festival. All performance works proposed progressive forms and contents, critical discourses on current and political and social issues. Not all of them could overcome their technical complexities and misfires, but each one opened the door to a novel digital genre for future exploration. By way of example, here are 2 of the performances I attended. In Silver Venus Redux, Andrea Spaziani and Matt Smith asked us to settle into a chair in a quiet corner of our home and don earphones to listen with eyes closed in on their real-time creation of a soundscape that included the noise made by a solo dancer moving about the space. Although the performance didn't, in the end, draw me into its soundscape, it certainly stimulated my oral imagination. A young company of actors working in Montreal with provocative Iranian director Mani Soleimanu, inspired by an ancient Iranian narrative, took their solo presentations to several cities and villages across the province to perform in front of a single family in outdoor settings. I watched online, for instance, as an effusive actress shouted her story from a balcony down towards a family sitting in the park below her, feeling their joy and amusement at this most private of showings, ironically seen by a large group of virtual spectators. It might have been the skill of the actress and the genuine pleasure of the young family and the beauty of the natural settings, but this infectious performance left me exhilarated as I watched the watchers watching. And finally, choreographer Marie Chouinard, ever the somatic mystic healer, staged a free series of 3-minute solo improvisations with her 9 dancers for audiences around the world from inside her studios on September 17th, 18th, and 19th. Pre-registered spectators were sent a detailed text with instructions about how to go about formulating a heartfelt wish from which a dancer would then play the role of medium between the forces of life and the unconscious mind of the person who has made the wish. That's a quote from her own text. And so we collectively bore witness as one spectator after another gave voice to their desires, and in response, a dancer fleshed out a spontaneous incantory dance intended, as Marie explained, to initiate a flow of energy, a movement toward a possible enactment of change, end quote. Bound to an ample square of white vinyl, each performer stood meditatively facing a fixed video camera. Their improvised sequence was initiated and ended with an eager run towards the camera. Whoops, I didn't do that right. Run towards the camera, looking into our eyes. There it goes. Their improvised sequence was initiated and ended by an eager run towards the camera until the dancer's larger-than-life face fully dominated the screen. They then gazed plaintively into the eyes of the wish giver, who was visible to them on a screen in the studio. I'll try that once again. It's something like, how can I do this with the camera? I felt as if they were really looking into my eyes there. With Time for Time, Marie was inventing a situation in which to create intensely private meetings. Her ambitious choreographic essays seek no less than to unearth humanity's deepest existential preoccupations. She's epic. Did she succeed in bringing her aesthetic ambitions fully into virtual space? I would say yes. She's always been seen she's always been as much a visual as a choreographic artist, and this double vocation served her well in creating this online event. The gentle, loving gaze of each dancer loomed large on the screen, penetrating my consciousness, and the dancer and the sheer intensity of her visceral, animalistic movement style flowed from cyberspace into the muscles and nerves of my own body. I've always been a very kinesthetic watcher. With a nearly perfect technical execution of the engineering for these virtual performances, it was only a breakdown in her neighborhood electrical grid that put an early end to this vital flow of energy. The electricity shut down in her neighborhood. Here's my concluding questions. So what is being gained and what is lost in this brave new pandemic world? Death and destruction are sadly unbearably prominent. Yet ever committed to optimism and joy, as you can see, I remain attentive to the ways in which this extraordinary moment of multiple crises is propelling us to design a better world for all of its inhabitants, flora, and fauna. Artistic ecosystems are quickly reconfiguring to usher in more equity and sustainability. Performing artists are boldly reinventing liveness in cyberspace as they transpose performance into digital formats. Curators are asking what event making might look like when being together is not an option. Some aesthetic philosophers have speculated that art making is a biological imperative, others that it's a purposeful social invention. What is clear now, our art worlds are eminently persistent and resilient. Are all of these experiments necessary and equally effective? Are artists becoming internet refugees, longing for the real world of physical venues with live audiences? Which of these digital performance forms will and should endure beyond the crisis to become a permanent part of the artistic landscapes? And will new theater buildings, as arts administrator Louis Yu has suggested, seek to include sound and video production and presentation studios with these new digital live arts forms as a permanent part of their programming? I'll leave you with an incisive thought on the future nature of the curatorial vocation that garnered consensus among participants at the recent Berlin conference, Curating Diversity in Europe, Decolonizing Contemporary Music. What I heard many times over was the phrase, what we need now are brave and honest curators with curiosity. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. So I'm not sure if OJ actually heard me, but all right.
Hi,
All right.
can you hear
So
me?
there you go. Yes, OJ.
Hi, Dana. Hi, Ma'am Rosel. Hi, Ma'am Eileen, and hi, everyone. Yeah, do I introduce Ma'am Eileen Legaspi now?
Yeah, I
Yes.
introduced her already, but you can turn it over
Yeah,
to her.
yeah. Yes, that's what I meant.
All
Okay.
right.
Of course, I have my notes with me. That's a very extensive exposition of what's going on in the North American part of the world. But it's also resonating so much, right, with what we are experiencing in the Philippines and even in Australia. And I think before I give my thoughts, and which I will do during my time moderating the panel, I would like to turn the virtual space over to Professor Eileen Legaspi-Ramirez. Hi, Ma'am Eileen. Good to see you.
Can you hear me? Is
Yes.
this clear? Okay, great. So I'm trying to be obedient to the prompt. But I just wanted to start off by saying, Dana, it's always a delight to listen to you because you always restore my belief in humanity to some extent. And we really need that right now. Okay, so let me just say that the prompt, as I understood this, was what and where are present spaces of curation and what might curators attempt to do in and through them? As I try to address that, I'm also doubly trying to respond to Dana's presentation. I think the spaces that we have before us now are confounding. The net specifically is deceptively open. It's a deceptively open site that makes planning nearly meaningless. It's both intimate and intrusive. It's the distantiated but attention soliciting. It's secluded or constricted and yet temporally porous and expansive. It's transient and shape-shifting, are now mediated spaces of enactment and beholding are often living as well as volatile spaces. The illusion of any site being set apart immediately collapses as a food delivery call breaks through a conversation. A rumbling truck or tricycle drives by and dissipates a tenuous thread of thought. A neighbor wails an ingratiatingly tone-deaf rendering of a ballad. A child bawls or a parent shushes a toddler or helplessly pulls them off screen. Such are the spaces we are made to fit ourselves into and work in, often inhospitably. So, what might such wildly variable and conjunctural conditions do to our desire to still churn up work? I ask because I do believe we have gone past the moment when we can just pounce upon a perceived vacuum. Silences are not quite as easily broken today. Circumstances now call upon more lengthy reintroductions. The requisite, how are you? Are you keeping well? Has anyone you love passed these deadly months? Might these rituals of asking and crossing into other spaces at times call upon a cessation or a purposive halting? Perhaps this is the moment for a much eased clinicality or cultivated slack, when editing life out is hardly an option for the greater mass of the unwired and poorly wired. Such are the crumbs artists and creators are left to work with to keep brandishing some sign of life. Undeniably, there are upsides to where we are at. When things mercifully work for the moment, there's the sudden onslaught of content from all over. Suddenly, a live talk with someone like Fred Wilson or Naomi Klein is at your fingertips. Virtual museum tours, free access to journals and library holdings, major international film festivals hawking cinema once beyond reach, as well as once rare docus airing locally, albeit with some security measures in place. There too is the unfetteredness of anonymity, which Dana cites, the liberty of sub-chat heckling, the rest afforded by unrude tuning out, the flex potential of being only wired and not present. And yet all this is prefaced by not only being cyber savvy to some degree, but also having the luxury of means, being resourced enough to keep eating and maintaining an abode to participate from, but perhaps more importantly, time and energy to keep apace with what is suddenly on offer. The spectrum is of course bookended by real extremes. For today though, I'd like to ask, how gingerly might we have to tread, for instance, when performances are cited amidst other two nearby bodies, almost other similarly essential work, studying, housekeeping, food growing, tending, bartering, survival gestures asked of us who are trying to stay alive. How do we enact not just one but many mindful moments as Roselle's and Dana's invocations of First Peoples nations presaging demonstrate to us? How do we keep acting and moving when we are likely setting ourselves up for misreadings, transgressing of safe bounds, as well as the welcome gracious accidents of shared humanity? As teachers, how do we transform what and how we teach so that learning is respectful of difference, uncowering of painful truth, as well as upfront about failure and imperfections? Like most of us these days, I have no pat answer, even thoroughly scripted questions. I do sometimes think about how we might need to be more cyclical or iterative. Scenes, tropes needing to be rhythmically and visually altered in recognition of how distracted and immersed in daily life beholders really are right now. Might I also risk saying that none of us are really all there at this point, or not all together, and that we need to be forgiving from moment to moment? On the flip side, how can we keep sharp and not merely consign ourselves to being embedded in the camouflaging of soft capitalism that Amelia Jones so clearly put in her keynote yesterday? How do we put up a brave fight and not merely ride the tide? What might these endless but needed repositionings and flexings do to our practices in the long run? Hopefully, they turn us into beings more mindful and more acutely attuned to caring moments, caring paces, caring practices that no longer remain anchored to the rigidity of objects, programs, and striations of space-time, wholly in service of consumption and waste, precisely because the little we have undeniably become ever more precious now. I asked too, what have we done in and through the channels that remain open for us? Are we cleverly and critically engaging in the tumult? Are we blithely hopping on the digital rebranding train and pretending to be busy? Have we become too comfy in our echo chambers, or have we ventured into unsecured and treacherous zones where some bruising is healthy antidote to self-indulgent hibernation? I asked this troubling set of questions partly in response to what I saw was a dangerous thread emanating from the online chatter a quarter into our 7-month lockdown here, when artists were understandably miffed about being lumped with the inessential and thus unworthy of relief. Of course, work was being prevented from being done, sites shuttered, and even some modicum of bare living trudged upon by fascist measures. The groans of protest were undeniably coming from the gut. But to my mind, and I say this from where I was listening and watching in my own hold-up place, the groans reek too much of an unspotted exceptionalism. Too much of we are artists doing important work for society and not enough overt solidarity with thousands upon thousands who did not even think of laying claim on social import, but were sobbing over empty cupboards, untended elderly and the sick, verging on caving to death and sheer surrender to both illness and immobilization. Shockingly, artists were calling out the state for offering up paltry sums and lining them up as coeval to laborers. That stopped me in my tracks to ask, but isn't that precisely one of the ongoing projects of culture? Creativity, to have creative work recognized as work. With that, let me segue to the undeniably inequitable conditions in the art world Dana cites and which will likely persist, COVID or no COVID. Now more than ever, cultural workers need to reckon with the point of monetizing or at least bartering one's cultural value. But how to assert worth without falling back to exceptionalism? Certainly, we cannot say the cultural sphere did not busy itself to immediately respond in ways quite unimaginable and admirable, and with creative stealth, to such pressing COVID-generated needs as dearth of PPEs, hunger, the stranded state of individuals and families, as well as the continuing shock effect upon colleagues stripped of jobs and projects. We could do a whole conference just to marvel at what has transpired and continues to take place since March, when the lockdown started. However, here in Manila, just a few hours have passed since news accounts began circulating about Pulse Asia's survey, revealing that an unimaginable 91% approval rating registers for our sitting dictators overseeing of our current pandemic malaise. What does that tell me? I think we have still been engaging with mostly the usual suspects. Those who good spiritedly tell us we will arise and return to making and feeling good about our work in culture, despite such contraindications. How can we even begin to think we are healing when basic human rights have been stripped nationwide? An anti-terror law, even sans implementing guidelines, is being invoked to kill and mute, and our islands continue to be carved into geopolitical enclaves. As Dana put it, I would love to think we are at the cusp or, in fact, in the grip of revolution. But my cynical sense tells me it could go either way, with the frenetic pace that some quarters insist on keeping things flowing, reverting to the greedy one-upmanship that got us here in the first place. The imperial, the colonial, the uber-consumptive, the self-serving. None of these frames have truly dissipated amidst COVID's debilitating thesis. As creators and artists, how might we live amid some measure of these risks, given that vulnerability is indispensable? Something that I've heard invoked quite deeply. Given the minutiae we are consigned to gaze at on screen, or given the hypersensitivity asked of us when leaving our home forts, how can we more actively snap out of the self-framing that isolating imposes? How do we make the most of our fairly newly minted affective courtesies, keeping away far enough to not brush against another's breath and headspace, so that we refrain from doing harm? How to help others watch without violence? How to not lapse into intruding, turning haplessly voyeuristic? and plain rude habits of relating? How might we manage or live in the lag, the awkward pause, the unread breathing moment, unintended overlapping voice, breaking up of thought and feeling, the perils of faux aliveness and fake synchrony? How do we keep remembering that lockdowns are never equally shared nor suffered? The illiberty so much more painful for the already vulnerable from the awful. How to turn the made-up gatherings into felt and sustained coeval exchanges of time and life seconds. Cheering on the brave, honest, and curious, again as Dena puts it. May we all emerge more whole and humble. Let me just end by saying that the immediate challenges of being present in the immediate space of housemates and neighbors. We need to daily refuse to wholly get lost, indulging ourselves in pandemic paralysis amidst the time-space impasse that state mercenary touting of health and safety restrictions push us into. Our actions may essentially be short-sighted for now, but hopefully not merely self-gratifying and woefully survivalist. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Mama Eileen. And thanks, Dena. I think those two presentations give us a very good perspective of what is happening in different parts of the world, which are also connected in many ways, right? But before I give my comments, I just want to read what's sent to us via the group chat. So Sefer of NH Theater Agency in Iran says, our artists are becoming internet refugees longing for the real world. While Sunita Mukhi says, truly appreciate Dena's profound and positive description of how dance, performance, and intimacy prevail. Okay, I know that this is not my time to talk and give my thoughts, so I just want to ask people if you have questions, comments for Dena and Ma'am Eileen at the same time. Anyone? You can input your questions via the chat box. Okay, maybe the idea of personalization of arts, right? It has become more in demand. I mean, we're talking about our houses being the platforms on which we perform, right? Our everyday chores becoming the very performance that we offer, right?
Nerissa has her hand raised, by the way.
Yeah.
Who's raised her hand? Okay,
Nerissa.
Nerissa.
Yeah.
Okay, Nerissa, go for it.
Hello everybody, and it's just wonderful to be able to attend this kind of conference online and to listen to speakers like yourselves here. My experience as a performance artist in the pandemic actually was trying to the question of liveness in performance art and the definition of what is live, which used to be a definition of live bodies in space, a physical space, participating with an audience, has now opened itself up to the other meanings of live, which are part of technology, right? And then so the questions for most performance artists during the pandemic was, how do you maintain liveness? And I think you will have a speaker, Boyet de Mesa, who has actually encouraged performances under CPAF and Equinox in throughout the pandemic, actually. So we've had our CPAF and everything. It's the solutions were to pre-record performances, but also the other options to see what this can offer us and what is participatory. And I also had a performance with Quago under their subheading Bad Connections, which was I think really wonderful, because how what we discovered, at least what I discovered during this time, is how the performer is decentered. And this decentering is actually something that we had attempted in physical space, right? So I felt that there was this push into the periphery even more, right? And suddenly everybody's performing in this particular environment online. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nerissa. Yeah. This whole issue of liveness is really big, right? Once we turn to the online world. But I guess more than liveness, it's what we really miss is bodily contact. No, because no, because
Sorry,
no,
my green mind.
I mean, it can also go that way, right? I mean, because to be honest, isn't this also a version of live? I mean, what we're doing now, it's real time. But what we're missing is really bodily contact, right? Being in one space physically.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes,
so
we
this is
do.
really a time. I guess this is really a time to expand our notions of liveness, our notions of artwork, or what matters. I guess. I mean, Ma'am Eileen was talking about forms of maintenance work, right? Also as part of productive art making, right? Staying at, yeah.
Gino Estela is kind of speaking to that, but I don't think he can activate the audio of his computer.
Oh, okay.
We'll just read it.
Yeah.
Right. If you could
Si
like.
Eileen na yung chat box moderator, by the way.
Kasi ang dami.
Salo-salo na to,
No,
salo-salo
okay.
na to mga kasama.
Gino Estelia has a comment. He
Yeah.
says the trouble, however, is that money for the sector is being lost minute by minute. I am constantly challenged to look for ways to activate this platform for income generating purposes, which has proved to be very difficult. I think Dena was talking about ecology and economy, and then we realize that these two are intertwined, right? And one must not choose one over the other, because we still have to survive, right? So this is like a thin thread that we are walking on, right? How do we monetize what we do online while also not falling into the trap of like the neoliberal market? It's tough, right? I think it's tough. So, but I mean, any thoughts? It doesn't have to be from either of you, and it does. Yeah.
Well, in our case in Canada, the survivors so far have been the small nonprofit venues, the small theaters, the micro fundraising efforts, of local artists for other artists. The art worlds that are really in trouble now for their survival are the mega opera houses that here operate on commercial basis, and they're dependent on rock shows and mega tours, and those are the ones that don't know if and how they may survive at all this period. So that's an interesting dynamic, at least here in our situation. I don't know elsewhere.
Yeah.
I just wanted to respond to that because I was trying to dutifully trying to keep some small bookshops alive while the pandemic was up, and I realized how agile their operations were, much more agile than the big labels. So I think Dena brings up scale, the idea of that might ask us to be rethinking how we were dealing with our practices and channels of circulation. Maybe in this time, the small and the not flat-footed are the ones who are able to survive. Not to
Okay.
romanticize them either. Yeah.
Yeah. We only have 5 minutes left
Sorry, may
for
I
the
add to
Q&A.
that?
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah, but we only have 5 minutes left. Okay, go for it.
Sige. Siguro also because the democratization not only doesn't apply to online and practices, but precisely industries as well. So the big industries are being questioned. And we should question them for the longest time, please. And now is like the cusp really of this questioning, and hopefully it will crumble. And so these small enterprises and these small creative industries and small operations should be really, we should really put more focus on that as well. So it's thriving in that underground economy as well.
Right. Okay, we can only accommodate one last question before we move to the Exchange Cafe. Anyone? One final question. Someone says, thank you very much for the mind-tickling. I love that. Mind-tickling provocations. Have a great day. Stay safe.
There's also other comments.
There's another one. Yes, it is tough. Survival and market we live in. How can we approach the global supply chain where exchange of in arts and culture is the essence of creativity, and yet cultural policy differs from country to country? Shift and redefinition of arts, including dance. Right. So this is a topic that deserves its own conference. Right. Anyone? Or maybe parting thoughts, parting words, right, from Dena and Mama Eileen.
Eileen.
I think I've said plenty.
Yeah.
It's quite an experience to be sitting beside you with our two perspectives on the very same moment we're living. And it makes me realize how our individual point of view, in fact, tempers everything. What we do, how we see the world, how we analyze it, how we experience it. I just made this decision in my 30s to be an optimist, and I've kind of stuck to my life plan. And but it's good to have the feet on the ground. I do admit, you can't deny that not everyone is fortunate, and that this is a very, very drastic pandemic now that we need to take seriously. So I actually liked the balance of our two points of view in the end. I really did.
Right. Eileen?
Yeah. So I wasn't joking when I said it's a delight to listen to you, Dena. After 7 months listening to myself, it's always wonderful to have another mindset to share from. So we're literally next to each other on Zoom, by the way. So
yes.
So this is quite an experience that I hope will continue, despite the deviations in experiences and take homes. More power to PCI.
Yes.
Hey.
There's a comment rather from Lira Garciliano. Can I read it before we say goodbye to one another? Or do we just say goodbye, everyone, and let's see each other in the Exchange Cafe?
We're gonna transfer the floor to Angel, actually.
Okay,
before we go to the
okay.
Exchange
Ma'am Angel,
Cafe.
go for it. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Dena. Thank you, Mama Eileen.
We're sorry for the abrupt, but
for cutting it short. Yeah.
But Dena is going to stay on for the Exchange Cafe. For those of you who want to continue conversing with her, she's a ball of positive energy. We need it, Eileen. So please go to her Exchange Cafe breakout room. But for now, I'm not seeing Angel. Angel, are you there? All right.
Yeah, she's there.
Here, I
Hi, Angel. So it rained in the
Karina, can you change the view to?
So it rained in the Philippines, and Angel is having a hard time keeping the connection.
We can see her now.
Hello, everybody. I want to see everybody. How is that? There. Oh, there. Oh. Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry. Maybe I say sorry first because my internet connection the whole day is really so bad. I got in my class this morning in UP, I got disconnected 3 times. And during our tech run this afternoon at 3 o'clock, I was barely there for the tech run because of the net problems. But anyway, I say good evening because I'm here in Manila. For some of you, I think it's good afternoon. For Dena, it's good early morning. Thank you very much. So yeah, we are all here in different time zones, and we would also, again, because of that, we would like to stress that the 4 p.m. is Philippine Standard Time. So it's really the time here in the Philippines, Philippine time. There was much confusion already with that one. So we're clearing it up today. We're in different time zones. That's the reality of this Zoom meetings all over the world. We meet each other in this platform, but we are in different time zones, in different weather, with different climate at that. All right. So so today maybe I should go through the um, program again tomorrow. We will meet tomorrow. I will see everybody again. I will say goodbye to you now because we will go to the breakout rooms after this. I won't see you anymore. But we will see you again tomorrow. Tomorrow we have Ms. Myra Beltran, who is here from Wi-Fi Body PH, and Ms. Piersandra Di Matteo from Italy. So we watch out for that, and a number of exchange cafes tomorrow. I'm sorry. The net is stressing me out actually, so I'm kind of panicking. But anyway, before we go to our breakout rooms, can we take a photo up again like we did yesterday? I will take a screenshot of everybody. So again, I say you give us your biggest smile because you're in very small.
Turn on your video.
Yes, please turn on your video and please give us your most beautiful, sweetest, and biggest smile.
Sweetest.
All right, so please stay smiling because there are 2 pages. Okay, ready? Smile. Okay, next page. Ready? Smile. All right. With this photo up, I would like to ask the permission of everybody if we can, if you will allow us to post this in our sites as we update what the highlights are of the day's activities. Pwede ba? Can you give me a thumbs up sign if it's
Also,
okay?
yeah.
Yes.
Also, I think we're asking for permission because it's in gatherings like this that we need to cascade all the positivity that we're getting from each other also in these types of gatherings. So we want to share these smiles as well.
So okay,
no matter how corny they are.
So is it okay? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. So just a few reminders again. When you enter again tomorrow in the Zoom room, please don't forget to change your name because we cannot recognize some of your nicknames in your Zoom profile. So it's better to put your names, the one that you registered, the names that you put in your registration forms. There. So now we proceed to our breakout rooms. Again, we ask for patience from everybody. It will take time. It will take some time for Karina to direct all of you to your breakout room. So what we have right now is meet the presenter room. Those who want to talk more with Dena, you can go to her room, and the PCI network room. We have our meet the partner with Asef. May I know if Valentina is here from ASEF? Okay. And the Creatives Exchange Room with Abby Felix, Carl Ablais, and Alex Ambayek. the showcase room, doculective with arts. But unfortunately, because of net problems, we won't be able to open a room, the listening room with Bong Ramilo because of our net problems here in Manila. So we will probably be broadcasting it in our FB pages, or maybe in the coming days we will schedule it. Okay. May I know if Valentina is here from ASEF, or anybody from ASEF?
Karina says, I baka na-disconnect
Okay.
or
Sige.
something.
All right. So, have I forgotten anything, Rosel?
No,
That's about it.
just see you tomorrow. Don't
See you
forget,
tomorrow.
we have another fun field. We have another discourse field presentations and conversations tomorrow. Pure Sandra De Mateo has also a very interesting story to share because of how the Atlas Biennale of Transition has gone through the shift in the middle of the festival. And of course, Myra, na foreshadowed already by Rose Panuelo's
Comment.
comment. Yes, Dana has something to say.
Question: do we have to do something to get into these meeting rooms?
No, Karina will do that for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. Okay, Karina will
You
do
have to run to the camera, Dana.
That's it. All right.
Oh my God, I miss you all. I suddenly miss all of you. All right.
How about Herbert Alvarez and Elena Laniog? Are they here already for the show?
I saw Herbert.
Present.
All right. All right. So without much further ado, Karina, take us to our breakout.
Do the magic.
See you all tomorrow, guys. Mwah, mwah,
See
mwah.
you tomorrow. Big hugs. Hello?
Hello, ate.
What's going on? Why am I? Okay. Hello! How are you? How many are we? Why is Dana in this room? Is Dana in this room? Eileen is in this room. How many are we in this room? We have 13 participants or 14 in the room.
Rosel, is this supposed to be the room with Bong?
No, unfortunately, we
Oh, hindi yun matutuloy. Pero ito ba yung room?
no, ito yung Soup of Grace.
Okay.
So with Elena and Herbert, they
I
just
see.
premiered Soup of Grace 2 days ago. And this is the first time that they're gonna talk about their process. Am I right? Or did you do the artist talk already?
Yes. With Likha PH po, we kind of gave the introduction pero not the process.
Karina, Karina, I don't see everybody. Do we need to speak English in this room? This is live streamed also, right?
Yes.
So do we have guests here or we can be more relaxed in the colloquial language?
Parang okay naman po.
Ano ibig sabihin na okay naman?
Okay na po tayo mag-Tagalog.
Okay.
Mag-Filipino.
Ay, salamat.
Salamat, good.
Erika. Rose.
Rose.
Hello, Miss
So Rose
Ari.
is here. Hindi ko nakikita I don't see them Parang ang nakikita ko lang on my screen is Herbert and Elena. Okay. So let's officially welcome everybody because we're gonna have a showing first of the first episode of Soup of Grace. Like what Elena said, they already talked about the process of Soup of Grace for a little bit in Likha PH, but this is kind of the talk after the premiere.
Yes.
So Soup of Grace was um, termed as a choreographic research. Am I wrong? It's a
Right,
choreographic
right.
research.
Actually,
It's an
right, right.
ongoing process. It's an ongoing process from what I understand. Of course, from the husband and wife tandem of directors and choreographers, Elena Laniog-Alvarez and Herbet Alvarez, both co-artistic directors of UP Dance Company at the moment.
Yes.
And their choreographies uh, presented also in Southeast Asia, in Japan, and in the Philippines, of course. And honorary presence of their unika iha for the moment, who's my inaanak also. The interesting thing about the process as well is Elena. Sorry, Herbert. Medyo mas nakakling ako kay Elena this time because we had a long choreographic and movement research that we did in the artist residency that had many iterations already. And I'm so happy that that germ led to this. Elena has done so much wonderful things with the process already, and I have so many questions about that, how that transpired and how that evolved. But first, let us watch, yes, Soup of Grace, the
Yes.
first episode, so that we will have something to okay. I need to open it first. Suddenly, I'm not ready. Ano ba yan? All right. Okay, now I'm ready. I'm gonna share the screen. I'm gonna tick share computer so I make sure it has sound. And I will share this with you, this Soup of Grace, everyone.
Pwede ko naman dagdagan kung naiinis ka.
Excuse me, saglit. Full stick.
dinaanan natin dati yung pumayag si Archie Dalin. Yung dating, yung Australian tsaka Pilipina may-ari, tapos naging Thai restaurant. Nalala mo na.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
All right. Teka, tama na ba to?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay. Maraming salamat and I hope you were able to listen or watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
And now let's start talking to Elena and Herbert. Do you want to start off, Len and Bert, about your process? Again, no, I think when I previewed this, one of my main questions is, since this is a process-based research, process-based endeavor, always the challenge to process-based productions is how do you actually present the process.
Yes.
I told you that the episode is, it looks like it's finished. It does look like it's finished. It can be taken quite as as a performance on its own. So, but you're insisting that it's no, an ongoing process. So how do you, what is the challenge? What is the process? That's one question. The other is, how do you actually deal with the challenge of um, presenting the process, especially of ephemeral art like performance or dance? Gora.
Good afternoon
Good,
muna kami.
good
Ay,
evening.
sorry!
Ay, good evening po muna.
Dumiretso na ako kaagad, di ba? Napaka-informal. Sabi nga ni Dena,
Yes.
informal and permissive.
Yeah.
Yes. Good
Well,
evening,
of course, good
everyone.
evening, Ate Rosel. Miss you.
Miss you.
Rika is here.
Yes.
Some people that siguro first time namin na-meet.
Yes,
Ma'am
yes.
Jessica, Ma'am Ninian, Ma'am
Eileen.
Sekar, Ma'am Eileen, and Ma'am Lyra. Of course, Rose, who is our senior student. No? Well, actually, well, siguro before I talk about the process, I talk about siguro the impetus. Bakit namin naisip to nila, no? Well,
Sorry,
actually,
Bert, we have a non-Filipino speaker
oh, I'm
in
so
the
sorry.
room. So
Oh,
I'm so
naku,
you
sorry.
have
English.
to...
Okay, yeah.
Sikar from Iran, I think, is
Wow.
here.
Hello,
Hello,
yeah. Hello,
Sakar.
Sekar.
Good
Hi,
evening.
Yeah,
Sikar.
yeah. Good question. But before I was saying, before we start talking about the process, perhaps allow me to explain just a very short, well, idea of the impetus of this project. No, uh, no, that was
After lockdown.
yeah, after the lockdown. When the lockdown started in March, we were really doing nothing for 1 month. Then suddenly, slowly, we're getting back to teaching. Of course, that's the most accessible way of really, trying to reconnect. And suddenly, we started with this a lot of challenges. Teaching. I mean, you're not holding
Physical.
physicality. You don't have the chance to really hold your students. I mean, not like, but so used to it inside the studio. Then it all started from that. And there was one time, the first time I was teaching, for 5 minutes, I want to really cry because I suddenly lost that sense of worth. As a teacher, of
Oh.
course, I said, "Oh my, I don't want to do this." Then one morning, suddenly told me, sorry about that. Elena told me, she said she wanted to do this. She wanted to do a process-based research of choreographing online with all of these limitations. And how do you want to do that? Do you want to perform live? And she said, no, I want it to be in collaborative way. Then a lot of discussion happened. And of course, history happened next. No?
Yeah.
And yeah, Elena will talk to you about the process because
Okay. Hello po. Good evening again. So yeah, like everyone else, we are all of a sudden put in an unfamiliar situation because of this pandemic. As a human and as an artist, no. So us as teachers, we said we've been teaching for more than 10 years, 15 years, and we see art or artists struggle in terms of everything, in terms of time, of their time and space, of their mind, of their heart, of their body. So personally, same with us. We went through that kind of very reflective stage in this pandemic. So we said there must be an advantage to this limitation that we are that's happening right now. Limitation in terms of creation, because personally, both me and Bert are teachers and choreographers at the same time. So by that time, we see a lot of online classes and everything. So we said, what about in choreography? How can a choreography exist or recreate or reproduce or explore in this new normal that we call, no? So we said we want to confront. deep inside we are fearful, and we want to confront our fear by confronting the fear. so I said that by faith, let's do this. And we want in this way, since it's very natural for me and Bert to really share, share our craft. We teach online classes for free, or not even online, no, before this pandemic happens. So we want to contribute in this way. We can engage with fellow artists. In this way, we can go beyond our reach, no, not just within the UP Dance Company, because we said, oh, if we want to be convenient, then we use UPDC. Then for a month, it's done already. The research is done, but it's 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 not in our heart anymore. We know that there is this sense of rediscovering what is unfamiliar. Unfamiliar meaning, um, in terms of person, we know we have friendship. We've created friendship in this community of dance, but we are not so familiar in terms of how do we work, how do we dialogue, how do we figure things out. And so in choreography, how do we articulate in our body? How do we teach? So let me jump right away to how I am able to teach the choreography. So from Bert and me as a couple, he always say, okay, really, he always give me questions like, is that important? How does this important? Or how does this what concept do we exactly use? So he
So
gave.
Elena, sorry, let me intrude a bit. So you choreographed this.
Yes.
Both of you choreographed this and then transferred it into the virtual bodies of the dancers that you were working with,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So the choreography, is it collaborative, or is it something that you have set already before you talk to, or before you collaborated with the dancers? Because I remember we had a similar problem when you had to transfer your choreographic experience, bodily experience, to the body of Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah Samaniego, in that experiment that we're doing. So is it so? Can we kind of say what did go on in the collaborative process? And also, I'm very interested in the eye of the filmmaker that you're working with as well, because
Yes.
he's part of the choreographic element as well.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Definitely.
Okay, first of all, I want to answer that in my perspective as more of like, trying to curate this, because I am learning to curate it. When Elena worked with these artists, it's a it's like a diversity. It's different. When you work when she works with a certain person, that's why we call them. That's why we want to work, because we want to experience the unfamiliarity of these bodies. Of course, we have some dancers who were with us, but now not with us anymore. Like some of them are in Disneyland. We wanted to research that part because we are more interested. What is the impulse now? What kind of body? Well, their bodies are commodified. They're working in funky dance. They're doing work in Disneyland. So Elena has this. She starts with her session with improvisation. Okay, so it's like a throwing of movements. Then we talk how do we frame this, because it's so hard to start a research project theorizing it. We've seen project like that, and we cannot say that it's not successful, but oh my, I said I don't want to do that. It's like a big suddenly a big subject. So let's start
It
with
can be
something.
limiting. It can
Yeah,
be limiting
that's the
if you
right
put
term. Yeah. So it's
frame.
like,
Yeah.
why not? Let's make it this like a journey. What happened to us? Okay, we're in the process of brokenness. That's how we termed it. Okay, so we frame it like that. Now, how do you make them look broken? And Elena would have an exchange. We have some artists wherein after the improvisation, they haven't talked yet. Then the artist just cried. So, so I think we have in a way connected with her. We haven't even discussed about the project yet. Then suddenly, with this particular artist, it's different.
Yes.
It's a different take. And he would say, Nanglen, I have sent you the videos, but I don't think I am not in a meditative state yet. We didn't even set the parameter yet. But of course, we're not saying that it's that we want to see, but of course now it creates layers. Now, Elena, in the process of her aesthetics, okay, she is in a way minimal, as in minimalist sense, because of what the box can see, what the box can capture. Okay, then dancers are used to moving with a placed position. You know, like ballet. How do you do pirouette, right? Everything has to be in place now. So Elena tried to what do you call that? Reciprocate, or no. Elena's putting them in that position. We're in a position that it's so broken and it's so what do you call that? Awkward. Then they would suddenly, all of them, they would respond, oh, this is hard for my position because my knees, I have an injury. All of them respond that way. Then Elena would say, that's the idea. I want to put you in that position because I want to see how the movement, how this phrase could go in from here to here. Now we have that from here to here. That's another layer. So since I am writing everything, I mean, in now for a journal, it has become more interesting and exciting. And we haven't got to really dig in all of the artist's body yet. So that's why we feel like it's rewarding in that sense.
Yeah, so let me just add, thank you.
Yeah,
And then,
sorry, Elena.
yeah, and also po so that's in terms of, I think, contextualizing the idea. So that's his. And yeah, and because Bert is really like, okay, don't I think that's off, or I think we can do something about it, something like that. So I would materialize actually his context, Ate Rosel. I would materialize, or concept. So let's say he gave me this brokenness. How does a broken body, what is brokenness to us? What is brokenness to me, to him, to us, to this artist? Could be physical, injury like that, or internal, in the heart, in the mind, in the soul. So how do we, so we use this, way to channel the movement body to body. So I would say, of course, we would start again what he said, improvisation, framing the improvisation in a brokenness energy. Brokenness meaning floating on water. We gave this images, floating on water. You know, when you're broken, you're not solid, you know. But since you are on the water, you can be solid at the same time, because like you're being moved by the water. The water is the one leading you. So for example, the first movement in the choreography is the shoulder. So I would articulate it by saying, okay, let's go to maximum version first. I will exaggerate everything in slow motion. Then, okay, okay, let's go to the moderate, smaller, next size smaller. So you can still see it, but let's go to the minimum. Okay, this very small movement, but the actuality of the sensibility of that step is based on the smaller than small, something that is not seen but felt at the same time.
It's more internal.
It's internal po. Yeah. So we move, and then they got it, and then it's really the process in between. It's the breathing that connects them from here to here, and the understanding of whatever or whoever they are as an artist, whatever it's in their heart, whatever it's in their history, it's being transcended. And you can see in the film they vary, they do the same somehow. But see, one of the research question is, when we do this research, how is it similar from and different with, or it's similar with or different from each other? So that's why we use the medium of slower than slow, because we want to contrast everything that is happening in our perspective, everything is like still fast. We cannot do that because we have a child, we don't have a helper. Let's do what we can. Let's take things slower than slow, quoted by Sir Steve in one of my pieces, slower than slow. And then we discover the smaller than small. The way this film actually, we said, how do we, like recently we figured out that the film is not just there to film us, not that. More on, we discovered that film is actually your eyes, also how you see yourself, how you want your body to be seen, which part of your body you want to check or you want to be seen, those intimacy. So we were able to kind of cross bridge already that the film or the camera or this digital box, yes, they're a machine, but human perspective is still dominates, something like that. So choreography one, like very evident in the episode one, all the same, mostly the same. And then I teach it one by one per week, 45 to 1 hour of fellowship, of engagement, and then slower than slow. We said, Bert said, don't rush it. If you rush it, you will miss the details. So that's all.
So there are two questions. So there are a lot of dancers that you worked with. How did you? I mean, one of the things that I admire about you is when you work. I work in a very intimate setting because I'm so afraid at exhausting my energy to people who will waste it. So, but you are so brave in transferring that energy to people who don't know, to dive into that unfamiliarity of also people who you don't know, who can sap your energy. And this is a very intimate process. How did that energy, uh, to borrow your words, transfer, from one dancer to another, from one collaborative process to another, from one movement to another, from one site to another, because they also have different sites. That's the first question. The second question is, there was a quite controversial comment about the play of the film in it, because are you actually framing it as a dance film? I've been doing dance videos for a long time, but I've never framed it as a dance film. I don't want to. I don't like the idea of dance film. So how did that? I'm very interested in how you. That's me. That's not you. So how did you? How did that film, that tool, play, or what is the role of that tool in this choreographic experimentation, beyond the convenience of, the convenience of the tool that we have now, the digitization, the prompt of the onlineization, or even what Rose was saying a while ago about democratization
Yeah.
of the technology itself, and how young people, I guess, manage to use it, to the tool to their advantage, and to democratize the practice of art, because especially dance is a very intimate process. It's your body, diba?
Yes,
It's your body. Now you're kind of sharing it, no? So
yeah.
that was one of the important prompts of Rose a while ago in the open forum. So,
Right.
so there are many layers of those questions as well. So
Yes.
go.
Okay, go. Yes, thank you. Well, yes. So the focus is on the body, no. So we said body is anybody's body. We represent anybody's body. That's why you see, Sir Steve, was very wise body. We don't want to call it old body. We call it wise body. And we have the young as well. So um, for the cast po, I think it's also relationship more than anything, to be able to connect to them, and they see it, and they feel it. The sincerity is very important, I guess. And yes, we have this engagement with artists already, like in terms of hi, hello, manang, hello, ganyan, but not really so intimate. And we start from a very sincere intention. We want to connect, to be able to connect. You're able to share, and when you're able to share, you're able to know them, and you make this thing not about you, but about them and about all of us. So I think that idea of that tolerance of working with them one by one, getting to know them, their sensibility, and actually a lot more, all of them are humble, very positive people. That's why we are not intimidated at all. Like, of course, with Ate Georgette, we kind of like, we pray for because we looked at them. We looked at them the way, they have this impression of us because we respect them. And Ate Julie also, you will see her soon. And so,
And they also have a more formed body.
yes,
Diba?
Ate,
The
parang
people who have more formed bodies are the hardest to break.
exactly. So knowing their bodies like the institution already, institution.
Yeah.
So how do
Yeah.
we go? How do we enter that
Really?
institution? We said we gonna be human. Let's start from who we are and who are they as an artist, as a person, not an artist. And they slowly, as we converse, it begins to really unfold so smoothly that they would be so open for notes, for corrections, and at the same time, as we learn from them. So it's very, very soup, like the idea of soup. You put them together, and then we cannot avoid each other because it's fluid. But being part of each other makes sense. It's not about one, but about us. So I think that's what makes it able for this project to start because of this intention of really let's engage. Let's just by saying how are you is a channel of support to fellow human being. So how much more when you get to really uh spend time with them via Zoom and get to know their life and artistry at the same time. So it's been very, very yes, ate, bold at the same time. Intimate, bold, yes. So, but all of them are very open. So it is all by grace. We don't deserve it. It's really by grace. It's really by grace. So that's my answer for question number 1. For question 2.
Yes,
Just to
question
add,
number 2, and then we'll open for a few questions
Yes,
from the
po.
floor.
Yes.
Okay.
just to add to what Elena is said, in my observation, the sessions um, has been more like already ano ba natin sabihin? How do we say that? More like there's like how do I explain it? I see it more like parang special or extraordinary
Personal.
when they start exchanging with each other. I have that feeling wherein I cannot go out here.
In the
I cannot
living room.
I cannot disturb them because um, well, for some of the artists, like I cannot come near the kitchen because she's rehearsing with Georgette Sanchez or she's rehearsing with Julie Alagde. I have that feeling, but that was before. But now that we're able to engage, so still I have that respect with the process because all of these bodies are very established. So now going to the film, when we talked with our filmmaker, Ruelo Rosendo, we actually did not want to categorize
What
the
is it?
output, the capture of how do we want to capture the process, because he was the one who also told us what does a dance film means, what does a dance video means, or what is a screen
Screen.
video. Then we said we do not want to define it like that. We want to evolve. Now, with that process, he was telling us that when he came in, Elena and I already did a lot of framing with all of the dancers because they were already shooting themselves. So we were telling them, okay, you do this top view, and Elena was and I was always arguing about the location. I said, why would you put Novi inside the toilet? I mean, he is in Sydney. I mean, there's a lot of nice places and locations. So we also negotiate. And suddenly, Ruelo came in at the first week of September. So he enhanced all of the technical aspects, especially the shooting. He helped us a lot, and he helped us. How do we use the camera? Even all the dancers, they shoot it by themselves. I mean, they have some camera operators or professional photographers who did it for them, but it kind of like their own direction in a way also, because like the case for Angela,
The dancers, you mean? The dancers'
Yeah.
own
Yes,
direction?
yes, yes, yes.
the,
Like the Angela.
Angela in Hawaii, that was in a reserve park, wherein
Forest.
when she lifts her hand like that,
The
suddenly the
sun.
sun dims, and it's the natural light that comes in. And when we saw that, we said, "Oh, this is the film already."
Yeah.
So, to be honest and transparent, we are also still trying to figure out how the collaboration could really go like that. But when Ruelo finished the film,
Yes.
then we realized that in a way, he also put his own concept towards how does she see all of these choreographies, footages, and it became 20 minutes. I don't know why, because he said he doesn't want to cut all of those. So it's gonna. His term was like it's gonna go kalas. I mean, it's gonna break the idea and the visuality, the feeling, the flow. So that's what happened. That's so far is our exchange. But now the first episode is done. We're talking more. So
And also po, let me just add very, very quickly. And yes, the artist also is part of it. We cannot claim, that's ours, that's ours, that's ours, that's ours. No, it's really very collaborative in that sense. But it's amazing how also Roello put them together, how designed it in house, no. So we are very, very grateful for his openness as well. And he said, because I asked him, or we asked him, so how do you feel about the process? What do you think is your exact position in this episode one? In what is not position, but more on what are, what do you process in this process? He said, I'm still observing, very observational. First, it's still observational seeing of what dance and film. So I think that's very humbling to hear that from him. Yes, but for us, uh, you're the film. You're the film. So yes po, that's all po.
That well, it's an usual process naman na that the relationship also transform into many different relationships of collaboration from one iteration to another. So talaga naman, it really changes. Actually, I have a similar question to Rose with her entry for the Wi-Fi. But that's another altogether. That's another conversation altogether. We just have a few minutes left. I want to open the floor for a few questions, maybe 3 or 4 questions. Sana easy to answer. Charos. Parang short. Hindi. So anybody who wants to jump in the conversation, we're yeah. Hinahag ko eh. Ang dami ko tanong eh.
Thank you, Ate Rachel. Yeah.
Oo, naman ako. Laging tanong. Diba? Rose, ikaw. Naku, naging teacher, nagtawag.
Hindi na kaiwas. Go, Leong.
Hindi napigilan. Erase. Ang old school. So, ay sa Sigera.
May question po.
Ay, oo, tinan mo. Si Rosie talaga.
Curious lang ako, Teach. Kasi di ba po, it's a collaboration ng film and choreographer. So, or ng filmmaker and choreographer. So, gusto ko po malaman kung gaano kalawak ba yung, ano yung hangganan ng liberty na binigay niyo po kay Sir Ruelo? Like, um, ginawa niya po tapos in-approve nyo or like nag-uusap kayo continuously habang per scene, ganyan.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Mamita, Mamita, do you
Julie,
speak
that's
English?
Julie.
Do you speak, sorry. So Filipino siya?
Oo,
Filipino?
student ko siya.
Maitim lang
Hindi ko
po,
alam
maitim
eh.
lang.
Ako rin.
Maitim lang.
Well, you ask, you don't assume. Sabi ko nga, you ask what PST mean, you don't assume that Pacific Standard Time. Okay, go.
Yeah,
Sige.
very quickly, I will try to answer this very quickly. Ano ba yung process? So, July, we started, me and Bert, with the concept. And then, rehearsal with Teacher Ava first, many weeks. And then, as we go along, we said, you can shoot already. You can shoot front, back, side, corners, top. And then we would tell Ruela, okay, this is what we did with an artist. This is what we instructed them. Is this okay? Yes, okay yan, okay yan. All right. Then we can shoot, and then we can just select. We can open to Google Drive, and then they can just put the materials there, and then in terms of sequence, like for example, choreography one, or who will come first in the film. We said no, we cannot do that because that's his no. So our part is the choreography and the concept. So and then and then he came in September, and there more enhancement in terms of view of the camera, angle, or technical ways to shoot, something like that. And then we never say, because Roello is naturally very easy to work with also. We never say, okay, hanggang dyan ka lang, hanggang dito lang ako. No, we learn to listen. This is very important. We learn to listen, we learn to converse, and we learn to say no or yes and yes also. So but the last part, which means last week before the launching, that's his. We just view it before October 3, and then we said, yes, we can't, when you watch your work published, it's amazing that when we saw it, we already said, it's not like, it's like watching not a different work. It's like different, it's refreshing. And for me, that's a beautiful feeling that we have, because he put it in such a way that is so refreshing and unpredictable for us. And so he showed the process in the process, because this is process based. Now we said, oh, I choreograph very long because I want it to be long, because we want it to know them. We want to know them. If we want to create only 1/8, it's just the appetizer lang yun. So something like that, Leong. It's very conversational, very experiential process at the same time. Not like, oh, ikaw yan, oh, ako to. No, because this is investigative as well. Anything goes, anything goes, something like that. So we are very open. Oh yeah, we learn from this. Okay, we don't know, we can erase that, something like that. So yeah, I hope I answered your question. Good.
For those people who came from different breakout rooms and were automatically directed to this room and don't know what the hell we're talking about here, you can gently leave. I'm really sorry. I couldn't intervene a while ago.
It's okay, ma'am.
But thank you for coming, Rhea. I see her, and I hope I see you tomorrow. If you want to chat with us, go ahead and stay. In this, we're also finishing up. So, just two more questions, I guess, from the floor.
Julie.
Mamita, who can speak Filipino? Charos.
Okay po. Good evening na. Actually po, yung naisip ko lang, how did you come up yung concept, yung buong, yung about yung research na nagawa po ninyo? Paano siya nagsimula, or paano kayo nakabuo ng gano'n na concept? sa research?
Actually, sa klase nyo yun, Julie. It was your class. Because I was, Ate Rosel, it was their class. It was a ballet for absolute beginners, which I opened from a school which I'm
Grabe
teaching.
yung absolute beginner.
Yes,
Merong beginner,
absolute.
tapos merong absolute beginner.
Kasi walang
Ikaw ba
alam.
yun, Mamita? Absolute beginner ka.
She was one of my students, and it was similar. It was the similar provocation. It's always the provocation, and of course, if I may add to that, no, when you have that provocation, you said, it cannot be like that, and I think that's a natural response of any artist, kahit sa anong field. You would always be challenged. It cannot be because my expression is not gonna come out, and they cannot allow that. So that is the provocation. And on top of that, actually, I have three things in my own. Second is Elena and I have been working with UP Dance Company for like 12 years, and the bodies are it's a very dynamic experience for us. Siyempre, working with these dance majors is actually rewarding in a sense that we have this avenue and we have this group of bodies where we can do our art with, and we are very grateful for that. But now we are in this stage of let's say maturity, that we want to bring the experience more outside of the academy, aside from doing it now. I mean, how about the community? How do they perceive dance? Will they always perceive dance in what they see in shows in the television? I mean, how can dance be more like a practice wherein I just want to share one example. When I did a workshop inside the prison. Yeah, it's the rewarding experience for me, wherein you're just teaching them to lift their arms and they're crying, and I said, oh, I want to do this more than what we're doing in the academy. And the academy is a very enriching place for us to do our work. Wherein it is the place where we can uh, conceptualize everything, we grow with our processes. But the community, dance cannot be just boxed inside, performing inside the cultural center of the Philippines. We wanted to go back to the community. We did some things with Romblon, in a tiny island in Romblon, and we see there's a lot of bodies and mind that needs to be discovered there and need to be taught. Okay, so I think that's the two provocations for me in my own.
And also lastly po,
Say three. Sabi mo
Three
three.
ba sabi ko?
ako mag-three. Di ba mag-asawa talaga kami,
Kasi
ate?
pangatlo.
And also, what's amazing po about the process, ate Rosel, is also, or Julie, to answer your question, is we learn from each other. We are like, yeah, we were the one who conceptualized and established this project, but this is not about us. This is not. We actually learn from them. Like Luis, who is an admin, and they are UP Dance, the UP Dance members, but they're, and Anton as well. They're in charge for the social media and the details. But we learn from them in a way that, okay, we ask questions that we never ask kung nasa UP lang kami or UPDC lang kami. And it's beautiful to learn from them. Not because, di ba, we want to keep learning. And when you go outreach, when you go to community, they will be the one to teach you actually. They will be the one to teach you the timing. They will be the one to teach you how to teach. Not me as a teacher, I know how to teach. No. When we go to outreaches, we learn. They're the one. And we adopt and we listen, and it's very, very humbling. So I think that's one of the most special ingredient of soup. Is we learn from each other, not so much of who started first or who's something like that. So yeah.
Ate, sorry, yung pangatlo
I'm going
po, curation.
Touch move. Bago ko magpangatlo, for those people who were automatically directed to this room, you can gently You want, because I know this is already at the tail end of our conversation, and you might be wondering what are we talking about. So okay, now we won't take it against you if you leave the room. Charos. Okay, Bert, continue. You're
Part of yung
last.
curation, no? Iba yung pagiging director, iba yung
Yes.
and of course, performance has iba-ibang dimension po yun eh. And how do you curate the idea and the idea of the body in the body itself, no? Parang it's metacognitive. Parang iniisip mo yung the way ka mag-isip, di ba? Parang wow, ang sarap nung ganun, yung parang okay, Elena, I've always admired how Elena articulates her process, no? And yung experience niya natin sa arts, no? Gabi-gabi namin yung pinag-uusapan and we talk about it like paulit-ulit ako, ano ba? Ano ba yun? Tapos ano pa? Tapos sabi ko sana kaya kahit hindi na lang, kahit nakasali din ako, kahit hindi na lang ako sa tubig, no? Kahit sa bangin na lang ako pag ganon, mag-lag roll. I mean, I'm not having that regret, but I'm wanting to learn, no? No, and I think I can do it with this project. And yun lang. Yun, ito talaga.
Yes, and my four, ate, lastly four. Yes, because na-open...
ongoing, process-based.
Ongoing, yes. And Bert opened up about your project with me po, yung kung paano mo ako in-investigate. So, yeah, the no-touch, yeah, as rippled in such a way that kami mismo nasa-surprise sa possibilities now. It's been humbling. And you can see nowadays, no touch, no, but no touch, no physical touch, but you're able to connect. So, yung sinasabi ko pong no touch, it's a word that or phrase that I coined from a choreographic research that teacher Ate Rosel did with me when he challenged me by movement without moving. Paano nga ba yun? Yun. So, ito na po yun. Ang napaka slowly and very impacting and immersive na hindi nakakaiwas sa no touch. And yon, it's a choreographic tool. It's so napaka-importante na medium, no, to be able to articulate in this digital box. You demonstrate no touching, but you're able to connect. So another layer yan, Ate Rosel. So ayun.
Yes, you're very siguro magandang curatorial cue na yung no, tantrums ni Bebe para pero siguro before I forget na two provocations for you. You've been talking about with regards to this Soup of Grace journey. You've been talking about community. I haven't seen a community's body in episode 1. I've seen a dancer's body still. So first provocation for you, because you were also talking about going out of the comfort zone of UP Dance Company and the bodies that we're used to work with as choreographers and dancers. And of course, we're thankful for the tools. Oh my God, they're so great. They're so good. No, parang gawin mo daw. Ang galing, di ba? But and you've been talking about exploring outside of that. No? And episode 1 is still a very dancer's body kind of exploration. And I know it's a slow process, but I'm putting the provocation there already for you. And then ang pangalawa nga na provocation is the keenness to the collaborative process. Also the ethical relationship of people in this very intimate collaboration. It's something that we struggle with in a collaborative process, especially if we're confronted with artist egos. Na parang sino may gawa nito. And we know for a fact that we're also breaking that ano ba yan? Parang masyadong limiting na kind of idea natin about collaborations, you know. So it's also kind of breaking out from the kind of engagement that the academe has taught us. Sabi nga natin, we have to have a life out of the academe, di ba? Diyos ko, nakakaloka kapag i-confine mo lang ang sarili mo sa academe, you will be broken. You will be broken because the academe is also constructed from a very neoliberal foundation. So, capitalist foundation where points are transferred or translated into commodities and promotions and so on. So ayaw natin, 'di ba? Sabi nga ni Bert, medyo a bit romantic, Bert, pero yung ano sa artist na kumawala, you know. So another provocation in that na parang the kind of keenness to the collaborative process as this soup of grace moves along. I know you have other questions. Docs, I know bakit, Madam Ori. You might have other questions, but you can just send them to us. Grabe, naman na akong stand-up comedian. You can just send them to us because we need to. Magagalit na si Bebe. Okay pa siya.
Ate, i-ano ko lang po, si Teresa Barroso composed the music, no? So another layer of collaboration pa yan, hindi pa natatouch. Hinay-hinay.
Yeah.
So, yun.
Oo nga. Yeah,
And we're so thankful to have her.
I like the music. I
Yeah.
like it. I'm separately from the dance. I like the music.
Yeah.
Parang, hindi ko sinabing hindi ko gusto yung sa sayawan. Sinabi ko lang, I appreciate the music for what it is.
Si Rika.
Baka ma-misinterpret Makota ko dyan na parang, I like the music. Separate from the dance. Charos. Taray mo. Anyway, so let's live stream pala to. Bakit ako walang so informal and permissive, di ba? Okay, with that, Rika, if you have questions, sino pa ba? Isabel, Mamita, tanong sa future, sa Soup of Grace, just keep the comments coming. And so this is an ongoing conversation. And I'm happy to be part of that conversation. Meron kaming thread na soup of so, ano nga yun? Soup with Ate Rosel, di ba? May ganon. Maraming salamat sa lahat. Di ba? Formal ako bigla. Maraming salamat sa lahat. Ay, meron bang final words? Meron pang 5? Ganon. Ay, picture! Sige, munti ko na nalimutan. Hindi pa to second nature sa akin Okay. Dahil maitim ka, Mamita, pumunta ka sa ilaw. Ako may ring light Nag-ilaw ako talaga kasi alam ko yan. Okay. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ate Rosel and everyone.
Biten, napakadami pang layers to it. Nakikita ko yung mukha ni Rika, marami pang tanong. But for now, let's end the night with this very nice conversation. Soup over soup. Charos over soup. And I'll see you tomorrow for the third day na ba? For the third day of the PCI International Symposium. Good evening, everybody, and have a nice evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Si Michael, bakit ganyan na itsura mo? Para ka ng mama.